Welcome to Sib Spot. Today's Reddit stories are from Am I the A-Hole? Story 1 is by Silver Butterfly 767. Am I the a-hole for insinuating a woman was fat? I'm a 35 female and I'm currently 8 months pregnant. Something I've learned, fun news for anyone aspiring to follow down that same path, is that a lot of people, mostly older women, feel that if you get pregnant, they suddenly have the right to both comment and touch your body without permission. Sometimes, often without warning, even total strangers. I'm an intrinsically private person, and while I don't take offense, it does encourage the inner snark to come out. I started showing around 5 to 6 months. I have 2 fibroids that are each quite large, think softball size. This causes me to look bigger and further along than I am. I've also not really gained elsewise. Yes, I'm aware it's a good problem to have, but I do look disproportionate. So it's really apparent even under hoodies. Fast forward to last weekend. I was in our local grocery store and an older, larger woman walks up to me and says something akin to, "Aw, honey, congrats! How far along are you?" Kindly, sure, so I smile, step out of touching distance, this usually happens when they go for a belly feel, and I say 8 months. She looked at me with a shocked expression and exclaims, "Oh no, hun, I would have guessed any day now. You're huge." So I smiled sweetly back at her and said, "Aw, thanks, you too." You can imagine it didn't go over well. At one point she said something about being at medical, and so my one interjection was, "Hey, me too," but it didn't do much to diffuse the situation. Eventually she huffed away and I carried on my business. I don't really feel badly, but I'm trying to gauge the a-holishness of my response. I strongly feel that there shouldn't be a stigma that pregnant women suddenly become public property, but acknowledge I could have once again been the bigger person, or responded with, "Yeah, I have 2 tumors in there with her," which has historically gotten a sputtering apology from people too. Fibroids are benign tumors, so this is technically true, just aimed at making people uncomfortable. I don't know why some people are so obsessed with pregnancy. If you see someone who's pregnant or even potentially pregnant, you shouldn't say anything at all. It's obnoxious. Give people their privacy, keep your distance from them too. It's actually surprising how many stories there are where a woman just comes up to and starts touching some woman. It happened at a cafe in one of the stories I shared before. This woman literally came up to her and started touching her belly. And I believe the waitress said, "Please don't touch a stranger's stomach." And she's like, "It's okay. She's going to have a baby." And she was just so excited just to be touching this woman's belly. Give them their space and their privacy. Down in the comments by Osis Moose. Not the a-hole. Good answer. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean she can immediately feel entitled to comment on your body. She's not a doctor. She has no business judging what your body should look like 8 months pregnant. Her comment was inappropriate, and I hope people will stop doing that someday. Our next story is by Ashamed Degree 741. Am I the a-hole for holding nothing back when my sister-in-law and her husband asked me about fostering when they already have kids? My wife's sister and her husband have been discussing the possibility of becoming foster parents. They have 3 of their own kids already, and sister-in-law's husband is far more eager than sister-in-law is. Sister-in-law is perfectly aware of the fact that my parents fostered when my sister and I were young, that our relationship with our parents is incredibly bad today, and she wanted her and her husband to sit with me and discuss things from the point of view of the kid who was already there. She has some worries about her own kids and how they could still give them a good life while helping other kids. Sister-in-law's husband told me before the talk that I could sugarcoat some of the stuff and not go into too many details. Most of my sister-in-law's questions were around how our parents juggled 2 kids of their own with any number of foster kids present. She wanted to know about the emotional impact. Everything. Background. I was 7 and my sister was 5 when our parents sat us down and said they were going to be helping other kids and giving them a home. They said some would be temporary, but some might be permanent. It took 18 months for them to get their first foster child. We had to be interviewed and a bunch of stuff happened before. Quickly, my parents went from the 2 of us and adding another child to having 6 kids in the home. My parents struggled to juggle everything and the ball was dropped on us. My sister suffered a lot more than me for it. At 19, she was diagnosed with dyslexia and dyscalculia. I've never heard of that one. And that was after years of the school noticing, but our parents not doing anything. She got caught in the middle of the teachers giving her notes to give our parents and growing frustrated when our parents wouldn't respond or agree to meetings. While our parents would say they would go, would forget, Mom would ask to be reminded and then become annoyed at being pestered about it. My sister gave up after more than a year of feeling like she was in trouble everywhere. She also never finished high school because her grades were so bad. I have asthma, and sometimes my needs with that weren't met the best. My sister tried to help by taking care of some of the dust for me, but it was hard sometimes when some of the foster kids had a lot of dust in their things and would bring it to our house and I was exposed to them. Our parents would always say the house was clean or would say a little dust wouldn't be too bad. But my asthma is more dust sensitive. The relationship with my parents was almost entirely broken down by the time we hit our teens. It never recovered. My sister-in-law and her husband heard a lot of these details and more in some of my answers. I explained some can make it work, but if you can't and your bio kids are the ones the ball dropped on, the damage can't always be reversed. My sister-in-law's husband accused me of trying to turn them off of fostering and said I was preying on sister-in-law's fears. He said I had no reason to give out so much information. Am I the a-hole? Man, I love it when somebody says something like, you have no reason to give out that information. Like, you have no reason to be completely honest with somebody that I'm trying to lie and manipulate into doing something that they may not necessarily want to do. They want the truth from you, but I want you to sugarcoat it and not give all the details. Make it seem like it's a lot better than it is, because I want that, and I want them to agree to do it. Ugh. Your sister-in-law's husband is the jerk in this situation. He would have been fine if he just said, okay, tell her everything you know. Be honest with her because I want her to make the right choice in this, and I don't want her to be stressed out. If he cared about your sister-in-law at all, he would not be trying to lie to her to get her to foster some kids. Down in the comments by Dusty Gate, not the a-hole, absolutely not. He's asking you to lie and being petty and selfish, to be honest. The most important and vulnerable people in this scenario are the kids, and your honesty is definitely in their best interest. Our next story is by Responsible Word 230. Am I the a-hole for calling my mom out for not wanting to be fully honest about the reason she wants her husband to walk me down the aisle at my wedding? It's a very long title. My wedding is coming up and my mom has been campaigning hard for her husband, my stepdad, to be the person to walk me down the aisle. I already asked my paternal grandparents. My mom knew I was going to ask them and knew when I had, but she has not given up on the desire for me to ask her husband. The other day she told me that it would make the most sense and she feels like he is the correct and most worthy person to walk me down the aisle. I called her out on that and said she should be more honest about why she wants him. The reason I know is because she knows her husband and my dad hated each other and she believes I should have been loyal to her husband over my dad. She especially believes I should have given all the loyalty I had to my dad to her husband after I lost my dad at the age of 7. Background: my parents broke up, never married, and my mom got married to her husband when I was 2. My dad and her husband hated each other. I was always aware of that fact, but it came especially bitter for me when I was 6 and my dad was diagnosed with cancer. I don't remember a lot from that time, but I do remember my mom's husband showing up to see my dad when he was in the hospital, and I remember him yelling at my dad. I know prior to that, the two were as bad to each other as the animosity was mutual. When my dad died, I didn't automatically start to care more or feel closer to her husband. He did try, and I think part of his hatred for my dad was I was such a daddy's girl and never looked at him being in my life as having two. I spent equal time with both my parents when my dad was alive. I never got close to my mom's husband. He was my mom's husband and my half-sibling's dad, but even though I don't remember a time when I didn't know him, I never saw him as my dad. He always hated my dad, too. I heard him grumble about him over the years. Even saw him spit near a photo of my dad once. Eventually, he gave up trying and decided I wasn't worth his time, which I felt was better for everyone. But my mom hates it. She hates that he's just her husband and I haven't embraced him as my dad. One time she said it can be so hurtful to lose to a dead man and be rejected in favor of a dead man. I asked what she meant by that, and she told me I never picked her husband over my dad, and I never let him feel like he won against him in one thing. I told her he had. He was still alive while my dad was gone. I think my mom still wants that win for her husband, especially when his hatred of my dad still burns strong. I believe my paternal grandparents are the right people to walk me. I have been close to them my entire life. My mom is mad that I called her out and tried to make her be honest. She said she was not lying and I was being rude. Am I the a-hole? You can make the choice about who walks you down the aisle. It does not have to be traditional. It does not have to be somebody who has even acted as your father figure for his entire life. He's welcome to do that and great for him for doing that. But him having this bitter hatred of your dad and you being close with your dad, you're not an a-hole for doing this. It's completely your choice. You don't feel close to him for whatever reason, no matter how good he was to you. You can pick who you want to walk you down the aisle. And what a respectful thing to do for your grandfather. I'm sure he will love it. Down in the replies by the IT Guy 1968. Not the a-hole. What a wonderful thing to do by asking your paternal grandfather to walk you down the aisle. Why would you want a man you have never seen as a father who hated your dad to do it? You have made the right choice. It's completely your choice, OP. You do you, and if anybody else doesn't like it, that's their problem, not yours. Our stories for today have come to a close. Until we meet again, have a joyous day.